Hello everybody, and welcome to Unit 1, the player characters and rules of the game. And you'll see in our slides why it is called that way. So, go to our first slide. Unit 1, what is government? Why do societies need it? So there are a couple of interesting questions here. A lot of people have different explanations of government. It's an evil, terrible thing. And the funny part is, with that expression there, you probably hear that from any country you go to. A lot of people have their own perspective of the country that they live in with the way their government has been working. And then some others, it's great, it's wonderful, it's functioning, and even then you'll hear that from many different countries. It all depends, and everybody has their own view of it. But the other thing about that is, why do societies need it? And I have heard a lot of arguments that, well, we don't need it at all. But there does seem to be a purpose to it. Whether good or bad, whether the governments need to figure out what's wrong and try to adjust, all of that does seem to be a factor of why societies do still need this. So, go to our next slide. So overall, government is very organized machinery. Probably have heard of the cogs in the wheel, and it's like that in a certain way. A government is a system. You have many areas in place so that it can function in a particular way. You can have laws, you can have that governing body so that you have somebody else handling a lot of those things and you're able to focus on your own life. And later on I'll get into some of the more specific things. But overall, that is what the government is doing. It's this big machinery. Cogs that are turning and connecting. Certain things are processed out and so that we can get things accomplished. And we go to our next slide. Why society needs it. So society's necessity is that without it, we would just be in chaos. And the people, society, form government structures no matter how formal or informal. With that, if you can remember high school, or if you just recently left high school, it's a recent memory, and this could be from my perspective, and it's been a while that I was back in high school, but there does seem to be a social hierarchy, a governing system where if you need something or want something, you have to go to the Associated Student Body, the ASB. And at the ASB, you can get your school t-shirts, you can get your coveted yearbook, and I call it the coveted yearbook because each year, you make the yearbook, you have to get the yearbook, at least that is what you're told by the society of the school system, and run around and get signatures. I can tell you that if I look at many of my books, as I collected them each year, I don't remember if I got enough signatures, but I think if you look in there, I might have quite a few, but I don't think I could tell you everybody who signed those. It may take me a while to remember, because quite a few of them aren't in my life now. But that was what I had been told in that social hierarchy, or even not necessarily what I've been told, but what everybody came to believe. And it's that I say, no matter how formal or informal, societies are formed. Government-type structure with morals, mores, anything, you have to act a certain way. Even outside of the school structure, if you're in a workplace, there's a certain ruling system that you fall into, or you find out who might be at the top of the hierarchy and where you fit in. Outside of a work structure, society in general, there's certain things how we function. You bump into somebody. It's common, or what we think is the natural rule. Oh, pardon me, excuse me. If you do not do so, then, oh, that person's a jerk. There's there are little things like that, that the informal part, society has decided that is our structure. And it goes further than that, but those are just a couple of the examples. Now, the formal structure, creating a government that has the laws, things that we've all agreed that you shouldn't run up and stab somebody. It's just not what we've agreed. And so on and so forth. Murder isn't the fine, looting, robbing a bank. These are things that we've all decided, no, we do not care for. And that falls into the government side. We need that structure to focus on those things so that we can do our regular day-to-day activities. Unless you have joined into those, that happens to be your work, the government structure or the law structure, but most often it falls, you want them to do that and you do your own thing. But that leads us into the players. So if all of this you consider to be the rules of the game, here are the players. In societies, there are at least 4 roles: the leader, the follower, the instigator, and the outlier. I say at least 4 roles. You may be able to find more than just these 4, but there does seem to be these 4 that stand out the most. So the leader is one that leads, as the name suggests. But a leader comes in 2 different forms. It could be the form that I have to do this, it's my way or the highway, or my way or no way. If I'm not doing it, then it's wrong. And so they take this on and they micromanage everyone. And I'm leaving the qualifiers out for these things for a bit. But the other part of it is the leader that is chosen out of necessity. People are fighting and somebody says, here, let's try this way, and they fall into the leadership position because they've figured out a plan, they've figured out the path, they're tired of the fighting. Or society has chosen them because of certain qualifications that society saw in them, and you know what, we need you. And then the leader takes on the role, and sometimes it works out quite well, and these are where the qualifiers come in, the good and the bad. In the first example of a leader, that person may be considered as a bad leader. In the second example, that person may be seen as a good leader. But it all depends on how you look at things. The leader out of necessity may make bad choices. The leader that micromanages everything may make good points. So there's more of a gray area where that you try to evaluate before just saying good, bad, throwing out those qualifiers. I've seen it many different ways, so just as a disclaimer, throwing that out there. But the next part, the follower, as the name suggests once more, follows the plan. doesn't rock the boat, it's fine, just tell me what the rules are, and we'll go with that. Some examples of those have been, if you've seen in movies, you have that most popular girl, and then you have 3 or 4 others that follow. They do whatever that one does, and they don't rock the boat. I've met some of that persona before in life, and I have talked with at least 3 or 4. One of the followers had mentioned to me that they didn't care for that, but they wanted to keep high in that status. The other examples come from history, the type that maybe are the farmers that just tell us how to believe, who to believe, we just want to farm. Alright, it's cool, man, don't bother us. So, it all depends. It's very interesting position, but most of the time it's that you don't want to rock the boat. You just want to stay on your own path, everything's fine, you just want to find the peace in your life. So again, those qualifiers, not a bad or good thing, it's just a role that is filled within our society. The third one, the instigator. They are what I have started calling as the monkey wrench in the system. The ones that see how the system is operating and I'm gonna wreck it. Wreck-It Ralph reference there. And I try to leave the qualifiers out of this one, and it can be difficult at times. But as an example, a friend of mine was the president of the HOA, Homeowners Association. And in each of his meetings, there was one person in the back of the room who would say, "Oh, that's not right, you can't do that, you can't have that flamingo on the lawn there." No idea where that voice came from. He probably didn't sound that way. He, sheep, they. But this person would read a rule and quite possibly make up their own mind about it, but would instigate at every meeting why something couldn't be done. And would not have a solution for it, it just couldn't be done. And that person left. And there was this nice, sweet, old woman who couldn't stand that other person. Get into a fight with them, argue with them a lot. But once that other person left, she then started saying, "Well, you can't do that. No, that's not right." Again, no idea where the voices are coming from. That's just what my mind decided they sounded like. Probably wasn't the case. But they became that instigator. Because it seems to be that in a society, that's the role that has a need to be filled. May not always be right, but that in most societies, and you may start finding these things out, that you need this instigator. And we don't know why, it just seems to be that need. And the final part is that outlier. The ones that stay far out listening and it's fine, but we don't want to deal with any of that. They may float into the instigator position if need be, or may float into the follower, but for the most part they want to stay out of everything. Going back to the high school example, that may be the goths or the punks of those different groups, and though they may form their own group, they're not going to go to pep rallies or really care about the yearbook. If they get the yearbook, it's very much their own decision, not following into the need for it. In the historical perspectives, those could be some of the ones that, maybe they think a little bit more conservatively, but fight for all things liberal. Could be that they don't exist in the political sphere, but they're very well read on everything and will help the instigators or the followers to make a better society. So the outlier just kind of sits in the back, watches what's happening, and then throws in their 2 cents every once in a while. But, like I said, these seem to be the overall 4 roles. The last part of the presentation is the works cited, just so that you all know. I got my sources from different places. I always like to do that if I do a PowerPoint. But other than that, those are the rules of the game, at least the surface rules, and some of the players that fit into it. And I'll see you next time.